Hello and welcome to Play Keyboards Now, Part 1, which is about chords. This program deals exclusively with chords and how to create exciting song accompaniments of your own in various styles, from 1930s popular songs to rock and roll, from modern dance music to blues and jazz. It's suitable for the complete keyboard beginner who doesn't yet know which style he wants to play, for the aspiring rock, pop or jazz performer who wants a logical and effective way into playing authentic song accompaniments, or for the experienced classical musician who may well be able to play Liszt and Chopin from the printed music, but who would have difficulty creating their own chord sequence to fit a simple popular melody. So, whether your taste is for Queen, Oscar Peterson, or the Pet Shop Boys, this program is for you. One of the reasons for the big guitar boom in the 1950s and 60s was the discovery that with the minimal amount of practice, anyone could learn a few chords and be playing songs in a matter of hours. For some reason, this approach has never been used for keyboards, even though playing chords is even easier on the piano or keyboard than it is on the guitar. Many modern keyboards have an automatic chord playing function, like this one. Well, we're going to learn how to do that for ourselves. The first section of this program deals with the naming of notes and the numbering system for fingers. Now, if you already have some keyboard skills, please feel free to fast forward to the second section where we start our look at playing chords. Here's another arpeggio pattern. We'll start with a D chord in the right hand. In the left, we'll be playing a low D. Incidentally, this is called playing the root. The root of a D or D minor chord is D, and the root of an E or E minor chord is E, and so on. Our pattern will be root in the left hand, followed by this finger pattern in the right hand. It'll be 1, 3, 1, 5, 1, 3, 1. So that's root, 1, 3, 1, 5, 1, 3, 1. This is how it sounds. Try it to this next chord sequence, which is the same as that found in Bryan Adams' Everything I Do for You. Incidentally, there's another new chord, the chord of A, in this song. You'll find diagrams for all of the chords used in this program at the back of the accompanying booklet. Here's the song. Now that you've learned a few chords and can play some songs, it's time to look more closely at the elements that go to make up a chord accompaniment. We'll explore the notes that go to make up chords and other notes that can be used later in the program. First, we're going to look at rhythm. Take a look at this series of chords. There are 4 bars of music. Now we could play just 4 beats of each chord, like this. Playing the 4 straight beats in the bar, we're said to be playing crotchets. Now this is fine for ballads, but what about more up-tempo numbers like rock and roll? Well, if we cut each crotchet into 2, we then get this. Now here we're said to be playing quavers. Some people like to think of each crotchet as £1 and the quavers as 50p, or $1 and 2 lots of 50 cents. It's very important to count it properly, saying not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. There are very sound musical reasons for this, but for now I'll just say that all the numbered counts are usually stronger than the and counts. Listen. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. Now that chord sequence, played as crotchets, would fit stars by simply read. If we played 2 bars of each chord but played them as quavers, you'd have Crocodile Rock by Elton John. Sticking with the Crocodile Rock idea for a moment, let's consider playing crotchets in the left hand and quavers in the right hand. Like this. In the right hand, I'm playing the chords 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. In the left hand, I'm playing each chord as an arpeggio, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the sound again. Try the sequence now for yourself. Start very slowly and be sure to count as you go. Well, you've come a long way now. You've learned 6 major chords and 3 minor chords, 3 arpeggio patterns, how to play 4 crotchets or 8 quavers to a bar, and you've started playing walking bass lines in your left hand whilst playing a chord accompaniment in your right. So just how many chords have you got to learn, and how do chords come about anyway? Well, 90% of the music you hear is made up from one simple pattern of notes called the major scale. Virtually all of our melodies and chords in the West come out of this simple 8-note pattern. There are 12 major scales, and we've written them all out for you in the booklet that comes with the program. If you look carefully, you'll see that no 2 scales are the same. Each has its own collection of notes. Some have a collection of sharps, and some a collection of flats, mixed in with the natural notes. The scale, or key, of C major has no sharps or flats. It has C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. All of the notes are said to be natural. So how does all this help you? Well, I can now give you some formulas so that you can work out any major or minor chord. A major chord contains the first, third and fifth notes of a major scale. So, for a C major chord, look at the C major scale. The first note is C, the third is E, and the fifth is G. How about a B flat major chord? Well, look at the B flat major scale. The first is B flat, the third is D, and the fifth is F. So a B flat major chord has B flat, D, and F. Minor chords have a different formula. We'll still be using the major scales to make a minor chord. Our formula will be first, third note flatted, and fifth. Let me explain that. Let's try a C minor. Go to the C major scale. The first is C, the third is E, but we want the third flatted, so go to the note just one step below. That's E flat, not D. There's a black note there in between E and D. The fifth, we already know, is G. So our C minor chord will have C, E flat, and G. Let's try just one more, A minor. So go to the A major scale. The first is A, the third is C sharp, so we flat it and it becomes C, and the fifth is E. So A minor contains A, C, and E. You should now be able to work out all 12 major and all 12 minor chords. You already know 6 majors and 3 minors, so there isn't too much to do. When you have them all written down, learn to play them in the order we suggested in the booklet. Play them 2 beats each, like this. And you can do the same with the minors. Now, I don't expect you to learn all of these chords in one go. Take your time. Learn 1 or 2 chords really well before moving on to another. The faster you force them into your brain, the quicker they will drop out. Regular practice, memorizing just 1 or 2 chords each week, is the best way to ensure that you learn the material properly and forever. Well, now that you know a little about major scales and the notes which make up major and minor chords, we can look at some ways of making those chords into something more interesting. One of the most simple and effective ways of adding interest to a basic chord is to make use of suspended fourth and added ninth sounds. Now, don't be put off by their names, because that's all they are, just names, like Bill or Tarquin. Try this. Go to a D major chord and move the finger that's on the F sharp up to the G. You now have a D suspended fourth chord, and you can use it in conjunction with the plain D major anytime you choose. There must be time to do this, of course. If you have just one bar of D with 4 beats in it, you only have 4 beats to play both the D and the D suspended fourth. You could play 2 of each, or 2 Ds, 1 suspended fourth and 1 D. It's up to you. This is where you start to take control. Experiment. Try it with other chords. Go to an A, like this. Play the A, raise the third up a semitone, that'll be to D, back to the A. Go back to one of the earlier chord progressions and try using suspended fourths every time you come across a major chord. Here's a bit of the Bryan Adams chord progression we tried earlier, this time with suspended fourths. Incidentally, it's called a suspended fourth because the chord contains the 4th note of the major scale. So what can we do with minor chords? Well, the same rule applies. Simply swap the flatted third note for the fourth note. Try it now with an E minor. The flatted third is going to move to the fourth. That's the G going to the A. Now this is not E minor suspended fourth. For some reason lost in the mists of time, a minor chord with the fourth note of the scale in it is called a minor 11th. Another note that can be used is the second note of the scale from which the chord has been built. Go now to a G chord. The second note of the scale is an A. Now we can use the A either to completely replace the B, in which case you'd probably want to play the A first and then the B, or we can simply add the A to the whole chord and have G, A and B. Again, this works with minor chords as well. So experiment. So let me sum up these new ideas here. Whenever you need to play a major chord, you can play the suspended fourth or the added ninth as well. When you have a basic minor chord, you can use a minor ninth or a minor 11th. The only rule, if there is one, is that the chord you play mustn't clash with the tune if it's being sung or played by another musician. But basically, if it sounds good, it is good. Okay, here's a chord sequence, the same as that found in Without You by Nilsson. Play through it, adding notes to the basic chords wherever you can. So far, we've been locked in some fairly tight chord positions, which can work a lot of the time, particularly in fairly basic rock and pop, where you have singers, guitars, basses and drums to add to the overall effect. But if we split the notes of a chord between both hands, and then play the notes not exactly as an arpeggio, but a bit more at random, we can start to develop a keyboard style that's more flowing, which is easily adaptable to the more intricate styles of rock, blues, and jazz. Let's start by splitting the notes of our chords between both hands. We learned earlier that a major chord consists of a root third and fifth. For a C major chord, that's C, E, and G. Put the root and the fifth in your left hand. We can complete the chord now in the right hand. Technically, all we need is the E. But we can use another C or another G if we wish. An important thing to realize here is that it doesn't matter in which order we stack the notes of our chords. Whether you play C, E, and G, E, G, and C, or G, C, and E, you're still playing C major, although it's probably best to keep the root at the bottom of your chord. Now let's add some movement to the right hand by simply playing the notes of the chord in a basically random way. Here's C major again. I'm playing root and fifth in my left hand. In my right hand, I'll pick out all of the C's, E's and G's I can find as I travel up the keyboard. And then as I come back, I'll put them in some kind of random order. Now here's that same idea using C, A minor, F and G chords. What happens if instead of just playing the basic notes of the chord, I also add the suspended fourths and the added ninths? Here's C major again. In my right hand, I'll be adding F, which is the suspended fourth, and D, which is the added ninth. Finally, for this section, here's a chord progression for you to try out these ideas. Major chords are generally described as being bright, cheerful, or solid chords. Minors are often described as being sad, thoughtful chords. Well, we now come to the restless sevenths. Sevenths often, but not always, pave the way for coming home to a major or minor chord. Blues and jazz in particular lean very heavily on that let's move along from here sound provided by the chord. Here's the formula. Root, third, fifth, and the seventh flatted. That means C7 will be C, E, G, and B flat. Try another one. How about G7? Root is G, third is B, the fifth is D, and the seventh flatted will be F. Now playing four notes in the right hand might be difficult for some players. Let's look at an easier way of playing sevenths, using a standard 12-bar blues as our sequence. We said earlier that we could share the notes of a chord between our two hands. For this blues, try using only the third, fifth and seventh in your right hand. We'll be using G7, C7 and D7. In the left hand, we'll be using an arpeggio played in boogie rhythm. So let's start by looking at that boogie left hand. Put a G chord in your left hand. The pattern we're going to play is going to be root, third, fifth, fifth, third, fifth. This This is how it should sound. Now, after the first note of the left-hand pattern, we're going to stab at the 3rd, 5th and 7th of the G7 chord. Do the same with the C7. And the D7. Well, now here's the complete sequence. Whilst we're looking at blues techniques, here's a nice one to add to your right-hand improvisations. Play the root and the 5th of a G7 chord in your left hand, and in your right, go to play the B, which is the 3rd of the G7 chord, but instead play the B flat, and let your finger slide onto the B. This is called crushing a note. Now, I'm sure that you've heard that sound before. It works on all of the white notes except C and F, where there's no black note to crush from. It's a technique used not only in blues, but rock, country and jazz too. In fact, used with the other notes of our arpeggio, suspended 4th and added 9th improvisations, they can sound very effective. Okay, here are the chords of George Gershwin's Summertime. Those of you who can read music probably have already discovered that music songbooks and single song sheets often don't contain the very twiddly bits that you bought the music for. Fortunately, for readers and non-readers, the chords are printed above the words. But of course, this is only part of the story. The use of suspended 4ths, added 9ths and crushed notes is usually not shown. Generally, sheet music is intended to give simply the tune in the right hand and some kind of simple accompaniment in the left. You have to listen in order to tell if a song uses suspended fourths or crushed notes. Once you start listening in this way, you'll be amazed how often you can recognize sounds and techniques. Here's the kind of thing to listen out for. I'll play several examples of chord sequences that have been dressed up to add interest. After each one, I'll show the techniques used to create the sounds you're hearing. Okay, here's number 1. Now, obviously there was more than just C, A minor, D minor and G happening there. In fact, there was the suspended fourth and the added ninth added to each of those chords. Go to a C chord. With your right hand, put your hand in position to play the C, the D, the E and the F. Get the root, and the F, which is the suspended fourth, the E, which is the third, the D, which is the ninth, and the root. Going to the A minor, the suspended fourth is going to be the D. Exactly the same pattern. So the D minor starts on the G, and then for the G7, the suspended fourth, yep, it's going to be C. Okay, here's example number 2. I'm sure you heard the crushed tones in there. So let's have a look in detail just what happened. Go to a C chord. I'm going to crush the flatted third into the third. That's the E flat to the E. Come down onto the G below, all part of the chord. Chord changes to the F, and again we play the flatted third, come down to the fifth of the F chord. And the rest is purely coming through an F major, E minor, D minor, leading us back to our C. Here's example number 3. Okay, what do you think you heard in there? Well, there were some added ninths, I think. Let's look here. C major again. You play the fifth in your right hand and the ninth. Play the fifth and come to the C. And then we're going to play the D, going up to the E, which is the third, down to the D, and on the C. Here's example 4. Now, example 4 showed how just 2 chords can be enlivened by an arpeggio and a passing tone of a ninth. Let's look at that more closely. Go to a C. I'm playing the C and the E in my right hand, root in the left. I'm going to play the E, pass through the D to the C, all part of the chord, and then change to the F chord, keeping the C in the right hand, and also putting the third of the F chord in the right hand. Do that again. then followed a long arpeggio coming down the F chord. It starts again. So far, when we've had to change from one chord to the next, we've simply moved from one memorized shape to another. And one way to make chord changes somewhat smoother and less obvious is to use a technique called voice leading. Now this sounds very grand, but is really a simple idea that cuts down on the amount of moving about we have to do with our hands. So go now to a C major chord. Now to change from C major to A minor has meant up till now that we've had to move up or down the keyboard. But look more closely. A C major chord contains C, E and G. An A minor chord contains A, C and E. Both chords contain C and E. So in order to change from a C major to an A minor chord, we really only have to change the G note to an A. And hey presto, A minor. So having carefully learned your chord positions, you can start to unlearn them. You'll still need them 50 or 60% of the time, but where possible, look into the possibility of holding on to some notes and changing only one or two when working through a chord sequence. Here's how it should work. Let's try C, A minor, D minor and G7. Here's my C major chord, C, E and G. To play A minor, I hold on to the C and the E, but I swap the G for an A. Now, moving from A minor to D minor, the A can stay, but the C moves up to the D and the E moves up to the F. Changing from D minor to G7, I can keep both the D and the F. I only have to change the A to a G to produce my G7 chord. Here we go. It's worth memorizing that entire sequence. Voice leading is essential for jazz players to master, but it's also a necessity for keyboard players with string, flute, and what's known as pad sounds. Listen to these synth sounds. Using our original method of moving all three fingers from chord to chord sounds okay, but by using voice leading, the whole sound is smoother and much more natural to the kind of instrument sound that I'm using. Here's the sequence. You've had a lot of rules and a lot of examples up till now, but you shouldn't ever be afraid to experiment. For example, what would happen if you played the wrong chord with the right bass note, or the right bass note with the wrong chord? Listen to these sounds. I'm going to be playing a single bass note in the left hand, and then move the chords in my right, playing chords that don't relate to that first note. And then maybe I'll try holding on to a chord and moving the bass note. Listen. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this first look at chords, how they're constructed and how they're played. It would be a good idea now to get hold of a songbook that has chord names above the written music and words of the song. You should then try playing the songs, which should be ones that you already know the sound of, incidentally, and then make use of the arpeggios, rhythms and added notes that you've learned so far. In Program 2, we'll look at playing melodies. See you then, and keep practicing.